Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, the 30th of July. And excuse me for being in sort of comfortable attire, but my office is kind of hot. So I hope you don't mind. Wanted to talk about what we're going to discuss this Sunday for the sermon. We're going to do an Old Testament reading from the book of Joshua. And it's about the story of the spies, Joshua sending the spies into Jericho. And it's Joshua 2, if you want to go ahead and read ahead of time before the sermon. Joshua 2, verses 1 through 24, I believe. So I'm not going to read it now, but Joshua sends two spies into Jericho just ahead of the Israelites' invasion to be able to take over the land that Yahweh, or the Lord, has promised to Moses and all of Israel. And the two spies go and enter the house of a prostitute whose name is Rahab. And they're in Rahab's house when the king hears that these men who are spies are in Rahab's house. And he goes and he sends men to go down there and orders her to turn them over. She would have been very, very scared, to say the least. And yet she doesn't turn them over. She knows they're spies. Instead, she lies. She lies to the king's men, and she says, no, they've already left. I had no idea who they were. I sent them on their way. They actually went out the gate, and they've gone. And hurry up and saddle up and go after them, because I'm sure you can catch them. And she had hidden them on the roof of her house. So she goes up to talk to the men, and she's got them in quite a predicament because the whole city has been looking for them. The gates are shut, and here's the situation where she cuts her deal. She basically says, look, I know you guys are coming to attack us, and when you do get here, I don't care what you do to anyone else in the city. You can kill them all as far as I'm concerned, basically, but I want you to spare me and my mother and father and my family. And the men make an agreement to do so. Rahab is a complicated character, like so many complicated characters in the Bible. I'm reading a wonderful little book, and I'll talk about it in the sermon this week, but it's called something like, I'm sorry I should have written this down, but it's called Fools, Liars, Cheaters, and Other Biblical Heroes. And Rahab is one of the characters in this wonderful little book that I'm reading. And I just wanted to ask a few questions as we prepare to hear this sermon and discuss this. God uses some of the most shady characters in history, in biblical history, to accomplish great things. If you think about it, one of the greatest heroes in the Bible is King David. In fact, the Messiah was supposed to be the recoming of King David, as reestablishing David's kingdom. And yet David was a liar. He sent out one of his best generals deliberately to get him killed so that he could have his wife. David was an adulterer, a liar. He was filled with pride. He had so many different types of things going on. And yet God used him like God uses all of us who are imperfect, if we are willing to be used, I think is the message that it comes to me. So how does God use people like this? And as you look at your own life, I think this should give us quite a bit of hope, shouldn't it? It does me. Certainly, I'm by no means a perfect person. I have not lived a captive and comfortable life. I've had lots of ups and lots of downs. And to hear how God uses people who are willing to be used, no matter what their experiences or their mistakes or sin, if you will, to me is very hopeful, and I think it should be hopeful for you. I've got 4 questions that maybe you might consider as we prepare, as we think about these verses. Rahab's sins and low standing, it didn't keep her from serving God. She seems to be ready, willing, and able to serve God. I wonder if you've ever gotten help from someone that you didn't expect, or an unlikely source, someone that maybe you thought, I don't know, that maybe you looked down on them a little bit, or you were judging them, and then you were on the receiving end of help from them. The second thing, have you ever felt intimidated by the credentials of other people? People that, the credentials or their goodness or their reputation. Have you ever felt intimidated by that? Or have you ever stopped or held back from helping others or getting involved in situations because you felt you lacked the proper credentials or the proper qualifications to get involved? Number three, how can we avoid focusing on our pasts and our mistakes in the past, of which we can really not do a whole lot about, and focus on what God is calling us to do in the present? Focusing on what God is calling us to do in the present. And then once you've made a decision, number four, once you've made a decision or taken an action you felt was the right thing to do based on the information that you had at the time, how can we keep from looking back and questioning ourselves? I think this is one of the things when I'm talking with people in counseling. There are different types of people on a spectrum, and if you have sort of character disordered, I don't want to say a character disordered person, but a person with a character disorder, or who tends toward character disorder, and another person who tends towards neuroses, or again, I don't want to label someone a neurotic person, but it's far easier in counseling to help out someone who thinks that everything is their fault than it is someone who thinks absolutely nothing is their fault and that they're never wrong. Those people are very, very challenging to work with. I think many of us tend to be more on the neurotic side, and we tend to blame ourselves. We find it hard to forgive ourselves. We find it hard to cut ourselves a break and be kind to ourselves and to forgive ourselves. As we look at these stories from liars, cheaters, fools, and other biblical heroes, how can we use this as an opportunity not only to serve God as who we are and where we are, but to give ourselves a little bit of a break for not being perfect? God bless.